The protagonist was Athanasia, whose name meant eternity. She was a princess, the daughter of the emperor and empress, who had lost her life in childbirth. Before dying, Diana, her mother, left her a magical kiss, although it's unclear what exactly she passed on to her daughter. After the empress's death, the emperor ordered everything burned and destroyed, leaving only the child, Princess Athanasia. The problem was that the emperor showed no affection for her, leaving her in the care of servants who also didn't care, thinking, if even her father ignores her, why should we pay attention? Since she was a baby, Athanasia had managed to enter a magical world, where a mysterious voice called to her. There, she found a book in which she could see her entire life. So, everything that will happen to me is already written here, she reflected, astonished. The book revealed that, when she grew up, she would be accused of using black magic, and her own father would condemn her to exile in a tower, never to leave. The princess lived in a world where everyone possessed magic, but she did not. Her father's cold, distant gaze transformed the premonition into a true nightmare, repeated every night in her dreams. Fortunately, there was someone who cared for her with affection. Lillian. This servant had been a friend of her mother's and, although of noble birth, had abandoned everything to remain in the palace with Athanasia. She was the only one who treated her well, protected her, and paid attention to her. Even as a baby, Athanasia was already aware of the future and knew that dangers surrounded her. Although she could not defend herself, she understood that she would need to find a way to change the course of her life. Her greatest obstacle was Claude, the emperor, considered by all to be extremely powerful. He can destroy an entire kingdom single-handedly. And that's my father, the little princess thought in frustration. 3 years passed, and the atmosphere around the girl had become more welcoming. Many new maids came to work there, enchanted by the sweetness and beauty of Athanasia, now 3 years old. However, among them was one who was only interested in money, while the others dedicated themselves to making the place beautiful with flowers and decorations. This maid watched secretly, searching for valuable objects the emperor had purchased for the late empress. One day, Athanasia approached and asked what she was looking for. The servant, believing her to be merely a gardener's daughter, replied, "Show me somewhere where there is gold." Athanasia, silently, thought, "She just wants to steal." Then she led her to the sunflowers, the wheat, and the fresh bread, pretending not to understand what she really wanted. Then, with calculated innocence, she commented that there were no great treasures left in the palace, but that there were still utensils adorned with precious stones. The servant was surprised by the girl's intelligence, believing they both shared the same interest in stealing, unaware that she was standing before the princess. When the maid entered the kitchen and began filling bags with jewelry and ornaments, Athanasia went up to where they were stored and put everything in her pockets. The woman tried to attack her, demanding that she return them, but the princess threw all the arrangements and decorations they had set up on her. The noise attracted the other maids, who caught her trying to harm the child. She was soon removed from the palace. However, Athanasia knew it wasn't by chance. She thought, if I hadn't acted like that, Lillian would have been attacked tonight. Indeed, in her vision of the future, the same servant tried to rob and stab Lillian. Therefore, it had all been done on purpose, keeping the recovered jewels for herself. Athanasia reflected that she would need them in her future, knowing the cruel fate that awaited her. Meanwhile, Claude continued his duties as emperor. Felix, his assistant, reported that someone had attempted to break into his daughter's home, and that the girl had successfully thwarted the threat. He expected a reaction from the sovereign, but Claude remained indifferent. In another distant place, a man sensed that something in the fate of the Obelia Empire was changing, and that the source of this was the palace. Through the book, Athanasia understood that she was merely a secondary character in that story. In her dreams, she already knew she would meet her father when she was 8. He will be the only family I have left, she thought. From that moment on, she would begin her effort to impress him, yearning to be by his side. However, without magic, this goal seemed unattainable. The worst would come at age 12, when she was introduced to society. At that moment, she would discover a painful truth. Her father also had another daughter, named Jeanette. She was a graceful princess, charming in appearance, possessed of a natural elegance, and possessed magical abilities. Perhaps she had even, at some point, received her father's love. Precisely for these reasons, little Athanasia did not want to experience a cruel fate. Nor did she wish to be rejected or exiled. Therefore, before her 8th birthday, she had been carefully gathering all the coins and jewels she could save, thinking that, when the time came, she would be able to escape her father and live in peace. In her plans, it would not be just her who left. Lilium would also accompany her, supporting her, and together they would take all the treasures Athanasia had accumulated since childhood. While reflecting on this, she ended up staining her fingers with chocolate, as she always took the opportunity to ask the maids for sweets and desserts. It was not just for pleasure, but also because she hid gems and jewels in the kitchen utensils. After eating, she went to a fountain to wash her hands, and there she could see her own reflection. Her face strongly resembled her mother's, but her eyes were the emperor's, eyes that shone like precious stones. Athanasia thought that perhaps it was precisely because she had inherited only the look and not the magic that her father despised her. Maybe he hates me for that, he mused silently. Walking through the forest, she came to a spot where she hid her jewelry, unintentionally startling a passing squirrel. Continuing on, she found a place that looked nothing like the ruby palace where she lived. It was like a vast, empty vault. Back at the palace, she heard from the maids that His Majesty the Emperor had ordered an inspection of every room after the incident with the maid who had tried to rob him. They also said they would search every corner of the princess's room, where she kept her precious treasures. Worried, Athanasia decided to act quickly. She put the jewels on herself and headed for the forest to hide them with the rest. However, upon arriving, she found the same squirrel digging and trying to unearth what she had buried. I can't lose this, she thought, handing it a peanut to distract it, and running in search of another hiding place. Arriving again at the place that resembled a vault, she decided to leave everything there. As she walked deeper, she found small golden figures shaped like cherubs. Could they be real gold, she thought, running toward them and even biting one to confirm. It was at that moment that she came face to face with Claude, the emperor, her own father. It was the first time he had seen her in so long, and he immediately noticed the resemblance to the empress. For Athanasia, it was a shock. I wasn't supposed to meet him until I was 8. What's going on? She thought, frightened. Claude wasn't a caring man, and his expression made it unclear what he would do next. Felix, who was nearby, looked concerned when he saw the little girl before the sovereign. The emperor tried to remember her name, the name he had heard from the servants when the empress had passed away. Approaching Athanasia, he surprised everyone by saying, almost casually, that she was chubby, firmly pulling her cheeks. He then ordered Felix to prepare tea, as he would be having tea with his daughter. Something sweet was served, but Athanasia remained in shock. To her, this man was the same man who would, in the future, hate her, exile her, and condemn her for black magic. What she saw before her seemed impossible. Claude, for his part, watched her silently, hesitantly, wondering if she would be able to speak. Yes, she can, Athanasia replied timidly, while Felix explained that small children could feel shy around strangers. Angered, Claude expelled Felix so he could be alone with his daughter. The emperor then commented on her name. He said that Athanasia was a grand name, laden with meanings such as eternity and immortality, worthy of heirs to the throne. Not even I was given such an imposing name, he confessed, remembering that it was not his son destined to inherit power, but rather his brother, the true successor, who had become a tyrant. Claude had murdered him and, as a result, had ended up taking the throne. This troubled him deeply, for, although emperor, he did not possess a name as noble as his own daughter's. Thinking of Diana, the empress, his expression changed. Remembering how she had chosen the name Athanasia, he asked who had taught her how to behave, and the girl replied that it was Lilium. Claude then revealed that he remembered the day Lilium had come running to him, asking permission to care for the princess, something he had accepted. Soon after, the emperor asked a direct question. He wanted to know if Athanasia knew who he was. Confused, she didn't know how to respond. Call him your majesty, father? Without much thought, she blurted out, in a sweet voice, that he was her father. Oh, I messed up. He must punish me for this, she thought distressedly. But Claude's reaction was unexpected. His eyes shone, as if he had enjoyed hearing his daughter call him that. Felix eventually led Athanasia back to the servants, who were eagerly searching for her. he informed everyone that His Majesty would certainly wish to see her again, which surprised the servants. Soon, Athanasia and Lilium were summoned to Claude, who thanked the maid for caring for the girl all these years. Athanasia, inwardly, couldn't believe it. He never cared about me. How can he act like this now? She thought, constantly remembering the future she knew. But in the present, Claude claimed he couldn't care for her because the responsibilities of the throne took him away, and that from then on she would live by his side, under his protection, like a true princess. The news delighted everyone around her, except Athanasia herself, who still believed her father was a demon in disguise. From then on, her routine changed. Every day she drank tea with Claude, received the treatment befitting her position, and was accompanied by attentive maids. However, deep inside her, her desire remained the same. Before she turned 8, she would escape that place with everything she had gathered. Claude, on the other hand, became increasingly intrigued by his daughter. He discovered that she loved shiny things and began to grow closer. Thus began the days when Athanasia visited her father. Nervous in his presence, she made small mistakes, blurting out awkward gestures that, despite themselves, seemed charming. Claude didn't scold her or blame her. On the contrary, he seemed to enjoy it, and it was at this point that a spark of hope arose in Athanasia. Perhaps, somehow, her father would come to love her. Then came the invitation for a trip to the lake. Lilium carefully prepared Athanasia, making her even more beautiful. With Felix by their side, they met Claude again, who, upon seeing her, commented that she looked increasingly healthy and plump. To any older princess, this would have been offensive, but to Athanasia, who was only 5, it still sounded like a compliment. Athanasia never quite knows how to behave around him, but she ends up saying he's also very handsome. Whenever she says something like that, or simply addresses him, everyone around her tenses, watching the cold, heavy gazes Claude gives her. Still, the day seemed to have a special air. They remain in the garden, surrounded by flowers, and Athanasia enjoys every moment, feeling happy until it's time to board the small boat, reserved just for her and Claude. Deep down, she feels a certain fear. After all, she can't swim. Felix tries to reassure her that nothing bad could happen, as she would be by her father's side. However, he regrets speaking so quickly when he sees Claude holding the girl as if she were some burden, without the slightest delicacy. The atmosphere becomes uncomfortable. He can't find the right words, but seeing Claude's golden locks moving in the wind, Athanasia shyly comments that his hair is radiant and very beautiful, adding that she loves it too. Deep down, the girl recognizes that he truly is beautiful, a deep honey blonde, but at the same time, she can't erase the memory that he will be the one to condemn her to exile. Silently, she wonders how that boat moves without oars, until she notices that Claude seems to be steering it with magic. When she looks into his eyes, she discovers they are incredibly blue, clear as 2 sapphires, and wonders if her own would be similar. Suddenly, a small, glowing lotus catches her eye. She even smells a gentle scent. She wants to reach out and touch it, but as she overextends herself on the edge, she loses her balance and falls into the water. Within seconds, algae and aquatic plants wrap around her body, dragging her down into the depths. Athanasia believes this could be the end, even though she already knows how her story will end. The desire still rises in her heart for her father to dive in and save her. However, she remembers that clinging to hope can be futile. But it's Claude who jumps into the lake and rescues her. He pulls her out with a firm grip and, using his magic, casts a spell that dries her clothes. It wasn't meant to hurt her, just to protect her. His expression betrays irritation, not with her, but with the entire situation. Soon after, he declares to Felix that the next day he will teach his daughter to swim, as it would make no sense to leave her at the mercy of such danger. Felix watches in silence, feeling the weight of his words. However, Claude also seems to carry something dark within him, a kind of magical burden that affects him in ways still unknown. After this scare, Athanasia falls ill. She has a fever, but is cared for by Lilian, who explains that the lotuses are magical and often deceive their victims, luring them to the bottom of the lake through illusions. Confused, Athanasia asks why such dangerous things exist, and Lilian explains that only people without magic are affected. Since almost everyone in the castle is noble and possesses power, they needn't worry. It is then that Athanasia realizes the problem is that she is the most fragile. That same night, Claude returns to the lake. He walks to the center, where the lotuses float, and faces the strange presence that isn't quite a creature, but rather displays before him the image of Diana, Athanasia's mother. In Claude's thoughts, it's clear he's tried to stifle his feelings since Diana's death, erasing any emotion. However, now that he lives with his daughter, he realizes he feels no hatred. Felix also witnesses the scene, but Claude remains in control, refusing to allow the entity to harm him. He simply states that there are matters that need to be resolved. The next morning, a maid rushes to Athanasia's room to announce that there are many new servants. When they emerge, they find an entire group gathered, declaring that from now on they will all serve the princess. To top it all off, Felix kneels before her and announces that he will be Her Highness's temporary personal guard. Thus conclude the first 3 chapters of Princess Charming. These were chapters full of emotion and fun moments. Soon we are told a little more about what actually happened between Claude, the Emperor, and Diana, as some prefer to call her. For now, little Athanasia dreams of someone with a familiar face, though she cannot clearly remember who it is. Upon waking, she realizes she is being carried by Felix, who explains that His Majesty wishes to have breakfast with her. The girl wonders why the Emperor, someone so important, is not guarded by soldiers, and why even Felix protects her so much. He only replies that Claude does not need that, for he trusts his magic, and drops the subject. Soon, he takes her to the Emperor's chamber, saying that Claude would surely be happy to be awakened by his little daughter on a beautiful spring morning. Athanasia thinks, nervously, that waking the Emperor is a huge responsibility and fears what might happen. Athanasia observes the room with curiosity before gathering courage to approach Claude. She notices a large map made entirely of gold and is fascinated by its details. Looking around, she finds the Emperor asleep in an armchair, not in his bed, which surprises her. Near him, there is a portrait that catches her attention. When she faces that painting, she thinks that man looks exactly like the figure who, in her dreams, had banished her. She approaches slowly and imagines, in silence, that perhaps this is her chance to get revenge, even if only playfully. With that in mind, she touches his face and gently pulls his cheeks, amused to see the Emperor sleep so deeply. When she realizes he begins to wake up, she hums a small lullaby, hoping he falls asleep again. The plan works and Claude keeps sleeping peacefully. Later, he wakes up with flushed cheeks, remembering what the girl had done. Embarrassed, Athanasia tries to change the subject, commenting that the palace has many things she had never seen before. Claude, still with a faint smile, says she is allowed to explore as much as she wants. At that moment, Felix appears, informing him that a nobleman wishes to have an audience with the Emperor and also with the princess. Claude accepts, but decides to handle the matter first. Distracted, Athanasia hears Claude say that she must have breakfast with him every morning, which surprises her, since she already had permission to walk freely. She starts exploring the palace in search of a portrait of her mother. In her dreams, Diana's image appears, but her face is always blurred, which unsettles her. While wandering through the corridors, Athanasia finds old portraits rich in detail, but none show the woman she seeks. After much searching, she reaches a distant room where there is a painting covered by a cloth. When she removes it, she sees her mother's name written on the frame, but the picture is burned. Only parts of the face and dress remain visible. The girl feels her heart tighten and thinks, sadly, that perhaps her father ordered everything that reminded him of Diana to be destroyed. While reflecting, she hears voices in the hallway. Some nobles gossip maliciously that the king might want another queen soon and mock the fact that Athanasia has no magic. One of them, sarcastically, says that if the emperor once had a dancer queen, anyone can sit on the throne. At that moment, Claude appears before them with a cold stare. The three kneel immediately. He orders them never to mention Diana's name again. Watching from afar, Athanasia shivers and thinks that name must cause her father great pain. After everything, she returns to her room, gazing at the burned painting and wondering who her mother truly was. Tired, she decides to rest, and, remembering the lullaby she used to make her father sleep, she softly sings until she falls asleep. The next morning, Athanasia wakes up early, for she must once again have breakfast with Claude. She enters the room with a firm posture, trying to appear confident. When she sees him, she smiles and makes a graceful bow, which delights the maids. Claude, however, remains silent. During the meal, she is the one who talks almost all the time, while the emperor only watches her. The girl thinks, silently, whether her father gets tired of listening to her, or if his silence is because of her mother's memory. Then, she comments on the tea he usually drinks and asks if she may try it. Felix tries to stop her, saying it is too strong a drink, but Claude allows him to prepare a cup for her. Upon tasting it, Athanasia closes her eyes and says the flavor feels like flowers blooming inside her mouth. The remark makes Claude freeze for a moment, for those were the exact words Diana once said to him. Without saying anything, the emperor changes the subject, and Athanasia realizes she might have said something wrong, though she does not understand why. Later, the girl, still sad, burns some drawings she had made of her mother. The ashes are carried by the wind, but someone, hidden, collects every fragment. As days pass, Claude stops appearing at breakfast. Athanasia begins losing her appetite and avoids going to the table. One day, while walking down the corridors, she hears Felix talking with Lillian. He says it is normal for the princess to want to know about her mother, since everything related to her was destroyed in the palace. Felix mentions he intends to ask Claude to use magic and show the girl his own memories of Diana. Hearing that, Athanasia runs to them and begs them not to do it. Frightened, she says she does not want her father to hate her because of this matter. Felix kneels and gently says that the emperor never hated either her or Diana, and that he had promised the queen to protect his daughter. To prove it, he shows her the reason Claude needs no guards. Garnet Palace is protected by a powerful magical barrier, impossible to cross for anyone with ill intentions. He casts a spell so she can see the shining dome that shields the whole place. He explains that only two people can enter freely, Athanasia and the former queen, because Claude trusted them completely. The girl then thinks, confused, why he does not want to hear anything more about Diana. Meanwhile, the emperor, alone, reflects. He was the one who gathered the ashes of the drawings his daughter had burned and, with his magic, restored each of them. He looks at the recreated portraits and thinks that he might still need one more year to forget her to forget Diana. The reason, however, remains a mystery. At that moment, Athanasia enters the room, encouraged by Felix, who had told her that her father would like to see her. The girl approaches timidly, saying she had not seen him for days and that she missed him. She apologizes for interrupting, but says she just wanted to see him. Claude watches her in silence, and when she thinks of stepping back, he holds her in his arms and murmurs that she is becoming bolder, as bold as her mother. Athanasia smiles, not fully understanding what he meant, while Claude simply embraces her, keeping the thought to himself. Claude carefully guides her to the bed, commenting that she probably did not rest well during the night. He then lies down beside her and asks her to sing the same song he had sung earlier, explaining that he wants to stay awake when she decides to get revenge by pinching his face. Athanasia hesitates for a moment and replies that she had already forgotten the melody. But Claude, with a slight smile and a playful tone, reminds her that lying to the king would be considered a crime. Faced with this, she sighs and begins to sing, while he discreetly uses his magic to transform the room into a serene and cozy setting, bathed in a soft light that invites sleep. As her voice fills the air, Claude simply observes in silence, feeling a rare peace. Gradually, he casts a spell that allows him to project some of his memories, and Athanasia begins to see them as if she were part of them. In the images that appear, she sees her mother smiling, radiant as she had never imagined before. Claude also watches these memories and realizes, once again, how he has always been a reserved man, with a serious and distant gaze. The song gradually fades, and the room becomes even calmer. In a few moments, the two end up falling asleep side by side, enveloped in a sweet and protective silence. Thus ends the 4th chapter of The Enchanted Princess. They wanted to assign a study partner to the young protagonist, since her powers had not yet awakened, and the Duke promptly suggested his own son. He was very intelligent and 3 years older than her. In the girl's dreams, he was the one who introduced the other young woman as the future successor to the throne and used her to rise through the hierarchy. Furthermore, his only son supposedly harbored feelings for that same girl. Since the present had changed, the protagonist imagined that he certainly wished to get closer to her to secure a better position. Before they could continue, she interrupted them immediately. She had heard everything. She recognized that the Duke's son was talented, read books about sociology and magic, but thought to herself that she had already done all that alone. She did not want a foolish person as a friend. She believed no one could match her in studies. However, he possessed magic a low blow. She thought that was enough. They decided to leave the subject for another day. Aeolus possessed a special planetarium, capable of measuring the amount of magic within a person. The greater the potential, the faster it spun. Hers, however, remained motionless. Her father held immense power, and her mother had been a dancer who used magic in every movement. Then how could she have no gift at all? 2 years later, while the maid bought high-quality fruits, everyone commented that her father loved the princess so much that he had built a library just for her. It was more than clear she would inherit the throne. It was then that a mysterious figure appeared. He realized that the maid was not supposed to be alive. Her destiny had been rewritten. Soon, the annoying boy appeared again. After 2 years, he worried that the princess still did not have a classmate. He said he had someone in mind, a girl of the same age. He himself had educated her. It was the girl from the future, the one who would take her place. The young woman had studied since childhood and possessed vast knowledge of law. The supposed plan was for this new student to approach the protagonist to meet her father. But the princess did not need help with law. She already knew everything by heart. She repeated in her thoughts. Article 1. The use of black magic is forbidden. Article 2. One must be just and not take advantage of the weak. Article 3. One must be benevolent and help those in need. Article 4. One must be loyal to the emperor and never deceive him. She was a true scholar. She believed her classmates should understand magic, history, and many other fields. To make that clear, she handed him a book without translation, but one she herself had translated into his language. And, in a low tone, she murmured that she did not want foolish friends. Before heading to the garden, she received from her father the book she so desired. It had been written by a magician whose name had been erased, containing numerous ancient spells. Her father warned, that book held an enchantment capable of awakening magical powers. He did not know if it would work, but he wanted to try. The book began to move, and she encountered the mysterious man. He had finally found the girl capable of manipulating destiny. However, since she was only a child, she thought he must have been mistaken. The red-haired girl approached and, in a single motion, manipulated and repelled him. He was the most powerful magician in the world. Before leaving, he gave her a piece of advice not to recite the spell to the end, as it would be extremely dangerous. The red-haired girl remembered nothing after that and, being somewhat curious, told her father that he should find a friend of the same age for the princess. The protagonist lived surrounded by adults and had no one to trust. She must have felt lonely. She thought that, deep down, they were so useless they could not even control her. As every morning, she went to have tea. Again, the table was covered with cakes, and now she could eat chocolates. However, those she had hidden in the kitchen had mysteriously disappeared. At the redhead's suggestion, her father asked if she would like to have a friend of the same age. If she agreed, he would choose one, but she replied that she did not need one, for she already had friends and cakes. She only wanted to live in peace until she turned 18. However, to change her own future, she knew she would need to master magic. Ignoring the warning of the mysterious man, she activated the spell again, releasing some chains from the book. Then she appeared the unknown figure who wanted to know whether her eyes belonged to the imperial family. Those who had eyes like hers had died 400 years ago. The current emperor was her father. It was said that people with eyes like jewels possessed powerful magic, but she had none. How, then, had she managed to twist the threads of the world? He did not wish to reveal the truth and put her to sleep. Even so, she did not give up on finding out. He was about to eliminate her when a cloud appeared and saved her. Frightened, she tried to cast a spell, and to her surprise, a shield formed before her. She felt happy, but her vision began to weaken. The last image she saw was of her father, with boots stained in blood. How could that be? Thus ended the 5th chapter. When she was struck, the girl's father saw her bleeding right in front of him and went into a state of shock. In her father's arms, the only thing Athanasia could say was the king's name. Soon after, her father fell into despair and urgently called for a healer to go to the palace. When she was examined, it was explained that Athanasia had a very peculiar disease. The healer examined the girl's entire body but found no anomaly. After consulting various kinds of healing magic, no one was able to find Athanasia's illness. Suddenly, one of the king's subordinates asked him to rest for a while. Before leaving, he wanted to know if sorcerers were better than healing magicians. He asked if he should find a sorcerer to examine the girl. When he least expected it, a boy appeared at the place calling for His Majesty. He asked them to leave everything to him, saying he would do his best to take care of the girl. We are taken to the past, where Athanasia's mother always took care of her daughter as if she were the last thing in her life. Whenever she thought of her, the pain went away. Then she wakes up seeing a tiny child in front of her. Looking to the side, she asks the boy not to bother her, since she is having a very pleasant sleep. But he gets annoyed, and she suddenly remembers that he is the magician who struck her. He asks if he is being ignored. She is in shock and, in her mind, only wonders what he is going to do this time. The boy asks if she wants him to turn into a prince to give her a kiss and wake her up. But she is afraid. She already spat blood and doesn't want to talk to him anymore. Athanasia realizes that her chest is no longer hurting and asks the boy the reason for it. He replies that he already healed her and asks why she is looking at him that way. He explains that if it weren't for him, at this exact moment she would already be dead with her heart burst. Athanasia asks if her heart was that bad. But before starting to talk to the girl, he wants to hear a thank you. Looking at the boy, she realizes he is very small. Before she can thank him, suddenly the king, Felix, and Lily appear to see how the little girl is. Lily had not stopped praying for even a month while she slept. Athanasia is shocked to have slept for a month. Before speaking to her father, she explains that it was the boy who hurt her, but he doesn't let her finish and tells His Majesty that he is very tired, as he used all his magic to heal Athanasia. A great magical energy had suddenly awakened inside the princess's body and created turmoil. This ended up making the princess fall into a coma. The king asks if there will be any collateral spell, but the boy replies no and that everything is already fine. He removed the excess magical energy using his own body as a transmitter. He explains that the princess's magical energy has a high purity, rarely seen in Obelia. There is a possibility that Athanasia may become the most powerful ruler in Obelian history. Felix is very happy that Athanasia has greater magic than His Majesty. But the boy adds that there is, however, one problem. The girl is still growing, and it is possible that something like this could happen again. Suddenly, the boy ends up kneeling on the floor, and the king asks if he is all right. The boy activates his magic and realizes that there are 2 lines on the heads of the king and Athanasia. But the boy says he is very tired after using it. The king says that one day he will reward all the boy's efforts and that he will be compensated for it. But for now, he would like him to stay and take care of Athanasia. The boy gladly accepts, but before leaving, he gives a little laugh to the girl, and she realizes that it was all a setup. The king notices that the girl's room is very old and wants her to be taken to the Emerald Palace tomorrow. We are told that the Emerald Palace is a palace used by several generations of princesses. In her dreams, one day Jeanette began to live there. While Athanasia was trapped in the Ruby Palace, her fate changed at that moment. But if Jeanette appears, she would like to know what will happen to her. She decides to think about it later. What she must face now is the boy standing right in front of her. She gets irritated and asks the boy where he got the idea that she had strong magic, since the power meter shows nothing. The boy says he never lied at any moment. The fact is that someone sealed Athanasia's powers, and that was to protect her. He explains that Athanasia didn't explode when trying to force her magic only thanks to the seal on her body. But the boy is sad for being called a fraud, since he was the one who removed all that magic inside her. Athanasia asks why he is now in the body of a child. He replies that he had been asleep for 400 years. With the mana he has now, his previous size was not efficient. He used his mana to save her, and for that reason, he would like her, at least, to thank him. Athanasia doesn't care about the boy and won't thank him. She thinks he is only exaggerating because he wants to eat for free. He gets irritated and says that when he is upset, he doesn't help a certain person who can explode like a time bomb at any moment. She knows he is only there for the food. If it were for anything else, he would have already told the king about the seal long ago. Like a good swindler, he replies that this is true, preferring 1,000 times to relax in the palace and eat good food every day. Athanasia asks if it was he who stole her magic and her chocolates. The boy answers that she is partly right. The one stealing the sweets is this creature right in front of her. Then he launches a strike, and luckily, she transformed into a cat to dodge it. Athanasia realizes that it was this creature that saved her when she fell. He explains that he saved his master's life by instinct. Athanasia wants to know more about Master. The boy explains that it is a divine beast born from the excess of magical energy that came out of her. He likes sweets because he follows the master's fundamentals. Athanasia decides to name him Shadow, but the boy asks her not to get too attached to Shadow. Since it was his fault that Athanasia spat blood, he explains that Shadow is a solid mass of the girl's magical energy. As soon as she touched him, part of that energy returned to her body, creating turmoil. If the same thing happens to Athanasia again, she will undoubtedly die. But considering the current situation, it is only a matter of time until the magic inside Athanasia's body overflows again. Athanasia asks what she should do. The boy replies that she just needs to learn how to control her magic. We are taken to the past, where Athanasia had a teacher. However, the maximum time she could maintain a spell was 10 seconds. Upon leaving the room, the girl's master explains that she reached her limit and cannot evolve beyond that. Returning to the present, Athanasia wonders how to control her magic. Suddenly, the boy appears there, asking her not to stay with that creature. Picking up Shadow, he asks her to leave it with him. If she does so, he can teach her to use her magic. Not wanting to, he doesn't let her take Shadow again. But suddenly, the king appears, managing to see Athanasia hiding Shadow. The boy steps forward and says that this monster was created by Athanasia's excess magic. He explains that dealing with this creature is being difficult. The king asks if it was Shadow who made her faint. The boy replies that yes, but if they kill the beast, the energy may return to the girl's body. He thinks the best thing to do is to observe her for now. The king asks if she can stay with that animal near her all the time. The boy replies no. If it is something moderate, both can stay together for a short period of time. Then, he will take care of the girl so that they do not stay together for too long. Seeing his daughter, the king decides to accept, but she can only stay with the animal for 1 hour a day. In the following days, Athanasia tried to use magic, but she always ended up failing. Then she becomes very irritated and would like to know who was the person that placed that seal on her, but she knows it was her mother. In her mind, she wonders if someone could teach her to use magic. Suddenly, the boy appears at the place to ask what she is doing. All this time, he explained to her that she cannot use magic without at least learning the basics, since she has a time bomb inside her, and if she forces too much, she might explode. Athanasia has an idea and would like him to teach her how to use magic, but he does not understand why she wants help from someone she hates. Athanasia notices that he is very hungry and needs food, but he replies that he is hungry and also needs magical energy. Then she proposes a trade. She can give him magic since it is overflowing. In exchange, she would like him to teach her magic. The scene changes to the king talking with Neve, when suddenly Athanasia appears at the place, and her father was speaking with the man so she could have friends. He decides to introduce Jeanette, but the girl does not accept and prefers that the boy be her friend, leaving Neve quite irritated since his plans are falling apart. The scene shifts to both training magic, where Athanasia must learn to manipulate the pen to write words. He would like her to focus magical energy on the pen's tip and control it as she wishes. After going through various subjects, he realizes she is a complete failure, so he decides to give her training so she can improve her endurance. Athanasia would like to learn magic, but the boy interrupts her and says she needs to know the basics first. The next training is to maintain balance. She must put magical energy and the elements of nature in harmony. Acquiring balance between body and mind is fundamental. Then, he offers several books for her to read within a month, since the speed at which Athanasia has been learning is very slow. After some time, she managed to complete all the exercises given by him and even fell asleep while using magic. Seeing the girl sleeping, he becomes intrigued by something, waiting for her to wake up. He asks the reason why she tries so hard. If it is only to survive, she does not need to go that far. Athanasia explains that her life is at risk, so it is natural that she gives her best. In the girl's mind, it is not just that at stake. She wants to live her life with her father. The scene cuts to the king and Felix. The man explains that he really is a court magician. The magicians of the same generation only remember his name, but nothing more. Both think they might be falsified memories. Felix asks if he does not think it would be better to keep the boy away from the princess. The king can see some of the boy's memories and realizes that he comes from Og and has no bad intentions. Felix notices that the king is loving his daughter more and more. Looking out the window, he wonders if this is what they call love. And so another episode ends. If you liked it, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more content. See you next week. Bye. Right after that, a little more of what was going through the girl's mind was shown. Athanasia had always believed that anything, no matter what it was, could be achieved if she tried hard enough. However, she found out she was completely wrong. After training for a while, the boy who was helping her no longer wanted to teach, only to eat all day. To him, the problem was that she demanded too much, wanting everything done perfectly. Athanasia did not want that. She was just inexperienced and expected a little more patience from him when explaining things. Lucas stated that magic was the act of using one's own magical energy to make the elements work. But before anything else, it was necessary to harmonize with the elements and with one's own effort. Irritated, Athanasia punched him in the face and demanded that he teach her in a way she could understand. After several attempts, all ended in failure. Seeing her frustration, Lucas laughed, calling her a complete disaster. She insisted that he teach her properly, but he only told her to practice on her own. Then, the boy decided to speak seriously. He said that magic was something people were born with, and the way to use it changed from person to person. To demonstrate, he spread elements around and explained that this was his way of manipulating magic, but it would not be the same for her. She needed to find her own path, because if she depended on others, she would never have anything truly hers. He asked her to stop seeking answers from him and start managing on her own. Athanasia became discouraged, not understanding the right way to use magic. Suddenly, her father appeared, asking if she was about to fight a battle against the cake. The girl replied that she just wanted to cut it in half. Smiling, the king said that if it was so difficult, he would prefer she not try so hard and think of another way to deal with her mana problem. The next day, she continued trying to use magic in every way, but without success. She complained that it was the teaching method's fault. Lucas replied that this was how apprentices had been instructed 400 years ago. Irritated, Athanasia realized she still knew very little about him. She did not know the mage's full name, nor where he came from. He only said he was a great sorcerer and nothing more. Leaving in anger, she thought it would have been better to call Lord Neve's son to teach her someone who, in her mind, should be more understanding. Lucas heard the comment and became annoyed, pretending to read his book while his face showed impatience. Athanasia kept insisting that the other boy must be kinder. Furious, Lucas asked if she wanted so badly to be friends with him. When she answered yes, he threw her into the air, saying that this way she could get to know him better. Athanasia fell into the arms of Lord Neve's own son. Confused, she wondered if he was really who she imagined. The boy, intrigued, asked if she was an angel. Fearing to reveal her identity, she confirmed, saying she truly was an angel. The boy, however, noticed the jewel-like eyes, identical to those of the imperial descendants, and soon realized she was Princess Athanasia, but decided to pretend he believed her lie. Soon the boy's father appeared, calling him. When found, the man asked what he was doing. The son replied that he was just taking a walk. Athanasia felt relieved that he did not reveal her presence. Watching the two, she noticed how much they resembled each other. The man asked if he was unhappy about studying outside the city. The boy replied that he was not, only worried about Jeanette, who always cried. The father scolded him, saying he should think about the family's future, not his sister's weakness. At that time, the man wanted him to become the princess's study companion. If he had managed to win her over, he would not need to leave the country to study in another nation. The man did not understand why Athanasia saw him as an enemy. The girl, watching from afar, knew he was only trying to follow his father's orders. The boy then said that she had the right to choose her own friends and that his father was right to want the best for him. The boy asked if he could study in the capital. The father hesitated, saying that he would need to show more skill before that. When both moved away, Athanasia came out of hiding and saw the boy sad. She decided not to leave and to keep him company. She said he could tell everything to the angels, even his frustrations. He smiled and sat beside her. The boy said he was proud to be his family's heir, but he also felt without freedom, as if he could not act of his own will. Sometimes he did not even know why he kept living. Athanasia was surprised to realize that he, so young, thought so maturely. In her dreams, the Duke seemed like a cold and cruel man, and she never imagined that his son could have such a sensitive side. She advised him to finish his studies as quickly as possible and show his father all his potential. He laughed, agreeing with her words. He knew that among noble families there were always conflicts, and that, as a future leader, he would have to face them. He recognized that his father might seem distant, but there was love behind it. As the heir of the Alpheus family, he wanted to meet all his father's expectations. Suddenly, Athanasia was pulled back to the present. Annoyed, she punched Lucas again, complaining that he was selfish, did not care about others' feelings, and even dragged her back in the middle of an important conversation. She said he did not teach magic properly and only did what he wanted. Furious, she left the place and went to the seashore, reflecting on what he had said about learning on her own. She wondered if she would be able to master magic by herself. She feared that if things continued like that, her prophetic dreams would come true. Suddenly, she heard her mother's voice saying that even if she never mastered magic, she would still be her daughter. When she tried to hug her, she realized it was only an illusion and fell into the river. The plants began to wrap around her, and before she drowned, she managed to use water magic to free herself. Lucas, worried, ran toward her, but realized that Athanasia had managed on her own. The girl was overjoyed for finally having used magic and escaped from the illusory lotus. Remembering that the last time she had failed, she then realized that, although Lucas was arrogant, his words had worked. She thanked him and asked if she could continue receiving his magic lessons. Lucas, surprised, wanted to know if she was not afraid of him after all. She had punched him even knowing he was a powerful mage. Athanasia did not care whether he was powerful or not. Upon returning home, she ended up running into her father, who was waiting for her with a clearly worried expression. He wanted to know what she and the boy were doing studying magic at that hour of the night. Without wasting time, he grabbed both by the collar and dragged them inside, grumbling about how that was no time for magical adventures. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to Alger, who held his sister tightly in his arms. He knew she did not want him to return to school. Jeanette tried to hide her discouragement, but her eyes revealed her sadness. Deep down, she understood there was not much she could do, and even though she wanted to keep him close, she had to accept her brother's decision. Curious, Lucas looked at the two and asked if they were sisters, since they had identical eyes. Athanasia, not really knowing what to answer, simply muttered that she was not sure. The reply left Lucas even more intrigued, and his mind began spinning with 1,000 questions. He wanted to understand what really lay behind that resemblance and whether the destinies of the two girls were somehow intertwined. His gaze reflected pure curiosity, and it seemed that not even Athanasia knew what to think about it. And thus, the episode came to an end, leaving everyone including Lucas himself eager to find out what would happen next. If you enjoyed it, leave your like and subscribe to the channel to follow the next adventures. The narration would say, closing the story. See you next week. Goodbye.